Hey friends, it is Jenna, what is up, and welcome back to the Board Game Garden, and welcome to a solo guide on this game right here. This is Kinfire Council. It's the next in the Kinfire universe by Incredible Dream Studios, who's sponsoring today's video, so huge thank you to them. It is designed by Kevin Wilson, which, fun fact, all of the Kinfire games are actually designed by the same designer as the designer of A Gentle Rain, so that is one of my favorite solo games. It's very different than all of the games in the Kinfire world, but I'm really excited to be showcasing you guys all you need to know about the solo mode in Kinfire Council, which I will add that you do need the Kinfire Council Winds of Change expansion that I have right here as well. So yes, this expansion adds in a few different things, including a cooperative mode as well as a solo mode. So today I will be going through a quick overview of how Kinfire Council is played. If you guys want to know exactly how this game is played, specifically multiplayer and competitive, then I will put a how to play down below for you guys to go check that out. But in this video, I'll go over a quick overview of generally how it plays, and then I will be going through what comes in the Winds of Change expansion and focusing specifically on the solo mode, which is somewhat similar to the cooperative mode as well. So I'll kind of go over that as well. But basically, this is a video that you're going to be coming to if you want to know exactly how this game is played solo and really all of the things that you want to focus on when it comes to the solo mode. So if you guys are interested in that, then just keep on watching. Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoy. Also, hit that subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. Comment down below if Kinfire Council is one that you are interested in. I will let you guys know that this is going to be available at Gen Con at the Incredible Dream Studios booth, so I will put their booth number somewhere. If you are at Gen Con, definitely go and check that out. Without further ado, let's get into this solo guide of Kinfire Council, shall we? All right, so getting right into it, like I said, I am going to be doing a quick overview of how generally the game is played, what you're going to be doing in the game, but then I am going to be focusing more on the solo mode and the changes with that compared to the multiplayer. But if you do want to see like a full-on how to play, everything you need to know about Kinfire Council, I will put a link down in the description for that. But basically, this is following the events of Kinfire Chronicles Night's Fall, which that is another game in the Kinfire world, where basically there is this thing called the Starless Nights that has really done a lot of damage and destroyed a lot of things. And this game is set in the city of Dinlux, and this is the only remaining city that has not been destroyed. So in Kinfire Council, players are going to be playing as counselors, trying to become the best leader with the most victory points by doing various things. You are going to be going throughout the city onto these different worker placement spots, gaining resources and trading resources. So there's a lot of resource management. You're also going to be focused on building these lighthouses that are going to change every single round. You're going to be playing over 5 rounds. You're also going to be casting votes, which is a big part of the game. You are also going to be dealing with some dangerous threats, arresting cultists, and in the multiplayer game, I will mention that you can actually win by taking the side of the cultist. But for this video, we're going to be going through the solo mode, and in that, it's a little bit different, where you cannot take the cultist's side, and you are just solely kind of going against the cultists. So moving into how exactly the game is played, you're going to be playing over 5 rounds, and each round there's going to be a different lighthouse that is going to be revealed. So there are 5 lighthouses that you have here. Each round you're going to be dealing with a different lighthouse, and you're going to be trying to build up that lighthouse, which I'll get into. But within those 5 rounds, there's going to be 3 different phases each round. There is Sun's Rise, Day's Light, as well as Night's Fall. So the first phase is Sun's Rise, and there are 2 different things that are going to happen in this phase. The first thing is you are going to reveal the decrees, which these are going to be the things players are going to be voting on, and based off of which one has the most votes at the end of the round, that is going to be the decree that is passed. There are 4 different types of decrees. There are orders, laws, crisis, and elections, and each of them are going to be slightly different. Crisis are bad things that are going to happen if they are not passed. Elections are going to be things that are awarded to the player that has voted most on that decree. Orders are going to be one-time things that are going to happen, and then laws are going to be rules or things that are going to be in play for the rest of the game. So you're going to have 2 of those be revealed. And then additionally, in the solo mode as well as the cooperative mode, you are going to have a cult decree that is going to be revealed as well. So you are going to have 3 different decrees that you are going to be voting towards. And basically with the cult decree, there's going to be one instant thing that is going to happen when that card is revealed at the bottom. So this one here, for example, is deal 2 damage and add 1 trouble token to each threat zone 1 through 6 and 7 through 12. So that is the threat kind of zones here, which I will get into in a second. But once that is finished, so once that one-time thing is finished at the bottom, you're going to add this to the decrees that you are voting for that round. And then with these cult decrees, there is a number in the top left-hand corner, and that is currently how many votes that card has. And you have to have more votes on the other 2 decrees in order for that cult decree not to pass. And that cult decree is going to get you something bad. Something bad is going to happen. So if I don't have 3 or more votes on one of these 2 other decrees, by the end of the round, the cult decree is going to be the one that wins. And you don't want that to happen because, like I said, something bad is going to happen. So this here is, if passed, districts 5 and 8 are downgraded and each have a rubble tile placed on them. Then add 2 food to the city needs, which is over here, and I'll get into that as well. So that is everything for the first thing that's going to happen during Sun's Rise. And the second thing is you are going to unleash cultists. So you're going to take 3 of the cultist tokens from the bag. You're going to place them over here in the hideout. They are either going to be leaders, which are going to be placed over here, and that's going to be bad. They are the worst things to pull. But you also have the numbered cultists, and these are going to be placed out on the main board of Dinlux. So these are going to have numbers, like I said, 1 through 18, and whatever number that cultist is, that is where you are going to place them down. Also, additionally, this is how you are going to get threats. So you're going to look at the number here, and then you're going to look at the threat board here. This number is 2, so it is numbers 1 through 6. If there's no card there, you would then simply draw a card from here, place it out onto the board. If there's already a card there, you will add a trouble token to that card, which I won't get too much into that. We also have a 6 here, so that would be placed on the 6th spot here. Wherever you place these tokens, that spot is going to be kind of blocked for that round unless a player arrests that cultist, which I'll get into. But this is number 6, 1 through 6. That means that a trouble token will be added there. And then lastly, we have 10 here. There's no card at the 7 through 12 spot, so we will flip and reveal a card there as well. So that is the trouble tokens, placing out the cultists. If there were any cultists in the hideout, I would also place those out, which is something that will happen at the end of the prior round. But obviously, because this is the beginning of the game, you are only placing out those 3 cultists. There is additionally leader cultists here, which if you do get one of those, that will get placed out, and all of the different areas here on the threat board would get activated. So really bad to reveal one of those leader cultists, but that is everything for the Sun's Rise phase. All right, so moving into the Day's Light phase, this is the main phase of the game where players are going to be taking turns in the multiplayer game, placing out their workers onto different spots. Players can either place their workers on any of the spots here in Dinlux, which obviously the ones with cultists are blocked, but additionally you can place out your seeker as well, which is your main head kind of worker, onto different spots outside of the city as well. But I will mention in the solo game specifically, the player will be choosing 2 seeker and worker mat combinations. So in the multiplayer game, you're going to be placing out all of these different combinations of a seeker and a worker mat, and players are going to be drafting those in turn order. But in the solo mode, you're just going to choose 2 of those combinations, and you yourself are going to be playing as both of those seeker worker combinations, and you're going to go back and forth with these like you are playing two-handed pretty much. But the thing with the solo mode is, yes, you are playing 2 characters, but all resources and money and different things like that will be shared. The only things that are not shared are the specific abilities of both of the workers, as well as the influence and the sentries, which sentries are these different tiles that allow specific workers to gain more victory points based off of different things that they are doing and what they have. But everything else is shared. So the coins, the resources, the research cards, the arrested cultists, as well as the thwarted threat cards. I think that's how you pronounce it. Basically, with the solo mode, you are going to be taking turns back and forth between your 2 workers, placing out workers here, or placing, like I said, your seekers out on these spots over here. I'll quickly go over all of the different spots in here. Some of them are blocked by cultists, but most of these are going to allow you to get different resources, to exchange resources. This one here allows you to add in another decree. You can also use this one up here that allows you to use one of the tier 1 or tier 2 abilities that might be blocked by a player or a cultist. I will additionally add that there is 3 different tiers. There's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. They're like this stair kind of layout. Tier 1, you don't have to pay any taxes. Tier 2, you always have to pay 1 coin in order to go to any of these spots. And then tier 3, you have to pay 2 to get to any of these spots. Additionally, there are some places in here that allow you to cast votes. It allows you to upgrade and give your different workers special abilities that you have here, different skills that they can use. And then additionally, there are different spots here that allow you to gain more influence, which influence is what you are going to need in order to cast votes, in order to meet these city needs, as well as build the different lighthouses. So influence is pretty important, and generally there's a ton of different spots that you can go here. Another place that you can go to is the city planning. This is how you're going to be able to upgrade the different spots within the city. So you can pay based off of the tier, and that's going to allow you to flip over the tile, and that's going to give you some sort of upgraded action for that spot. And then you also over here have the Shady Dealer, which both of these spots, the Shady Dealer and the city planning, these do allow for as many workers as you want, but all the other spaces are just 1 worker. But another thing that you can actually do in Dinlux, instead of going to a space and using one of the 2 actions at that spot, you can decide to arrest a cultist. So you could place one of your workers adjacent to a cultist and you can arrest that cultist. You could take that cultist and that actually turns into a resource that you can use at other worker placement spots to exchange for different resources. So that's another thing you can do within the city. And then lastly, for the other worker placement spots, these spots you can actually only go to with your seeker. If you have a worker placement spot that's outside the city that has a hexagon, that means that the seeker is the only one that you can place there. So this is how you are going to be able to destroy these different threats. Basically, if I placed here, there's going to be on each of these threat cards different things that you need to pay in order to destroy that threat before it gets set off, because each of these threats have a number in the top left-hand corner. If you get that many trouble tokens on this card, that is going to activate that card and something bad is going to happen. So if you are able to destroy this card before that happens, that is what you want to do. So specifically with this card, I would have to pay 1 arrested cultist, 2 crystals, and then 1 wild, which is this purple token here. I will quickly mention there are these crystals here, which I think these are rare goods. You also have common goods, which are these stone resources. You also have the wild purple token here, which is a wild that can be used for anything. You also have food, you have coins, and you have the trouble tokens. So yes, you'd have to pay 1 arrested cultist, 2 rare goods, and 1 wild in order to destroy this, and then you would get 15 victory points. There's always going to be victory points in the bottom corner. So that is one thing that you can do with your Seeker over here. And then second, there are a few spots over on the lighthouse that you can place your Seeker. And these are going to be different based off of the lighthouse that is in play. So for example, here, I could go here and I could gain 1 research card, which research cards are going to go into your hand. And they're basically cards that allow you to do different things. And then also additionally to that research card, I would gain 1 vote. So I could cast 1 vote. So that would be the second thing that you could do with your Seeker. And I do quickly want to mention a few icons on this board that you're going to see that are changed from the multiplayer to the solo mode. The first one is going to be the cult influence. So if you ever see the cult influence marker in the multiplayer game, that is how players start to take the side of the cultist. But like I said, in the solo mode as well as the cooperative mode, you can't take the side of the cultist. So whenever you see that icon, instead of gaining cult influence, you would instead be able to take a trouble token off of one of the threat cards. So that is kind of how you're going to mitigate those tokens being added, is you can activate these different cult influence icons in order to take those trouble tokens off. And then additionally, you do have these victory points. The cultists would get victory points if I triggered this, but instead in the solo mode, instead of the cultist gaining those victory points, the cultists actually lose those victory points. So there is a specific spot here, which is called Highgate, that I would be able to spend 1 sentry in order to gain 2 cultist influence, as well as the cultist would gain 4 victory points. But instead, in the solo mode, I would be able to spend a sentry in order to take off 2 trouble tokens and have the cultists lose 4 victory points. All right, so that is everything for the worker placement spots and what you're going to be doing with your workers. Another thing that you can additionally do on a turn, this is a may do, you don't have to do this, but after placing a worker, you can additionally decide to perform 1 errand. So this is going to be a few different things. One is you can decide to meet a city need. So basically you have some city needs here. It starts off the game with the city by the end of the round needing 3 food. So I could decide to perform an errand and fulfill one of these city needs, which, like I said, is 1 food each. So I could pay 1 food, and then I would place 1 of my influence tokens to denote that I fulfilled that city need, and I would get 2 victory points at the end of the round for doing that. And in the solo mode, you would try yourself to meet all of those city needs, and then at the end of a round, if a city need is not met, that will actually add 1 additional cultist into the hideout, which is then on that next round going to be placed out into Dinlux, and it is also going to trigger some sort of threat card being added or one of the trouble tokens being added onto one of those cards. So you really do want to try to fulfill all of these city needs before the end of each round. And then the second thing that you can do when you're performing an errand is you can send a supply shipment to the lighthouse in order to help build that lighthouse up. You're trying to get this up as high as possible, so you are trying to build as many floors as possible. So you can pay however many resources depending on the lighthouse. So in order to build 1 floor, so in order to move up 1 space on this lighthouse track, you spend 1 common good. In order to build 2 floors, you can spend 2 coins and 1 common good. And in order to build 3 floors, you will spend 1 coin, 1 common good, and 1 rare good in order to do that. So I could decide to do that, spend all of those goods to build 3 floors, and I would move up 3 spaces. And then I would take 1 of my influence tokens and place that beside that I built 3 floors. And this is going to do 2 things. So you can see here that there is a blue side that has numbers, and there's also a red side that has numbers. The red side is going to determine how many victory points the cultist is going to get at the end of the round. So the more floors that you build, the less victory points the cultist will get. And then on the other side is the blue, and that is how many victory points I will get for each of my influence tokens that are over here in the lighthouse. It was, let's say on this spot here, I would get 2 times 3, I would gain 6 victory points. So with Day's Light phase, this would continue with me, the solo player, taking turns going back and forth between my 2 colors. placing a worker out and then performing an errand if I do choose, until I had no more workers or seekers to place, and then we would move on to the Night's Fall phase. So during Night's Fall phase, there's a few different things that you're going to be doing. The first thing is you are going to check the city needs. Whatever player color is here, which obviously in the solo mode would only be you would gain 2 victory points for each of those city needs that were met. And then if there are some city needs that are not met, like I said, those will be additional cultists that will be added into the hideout here that will be placed out in Dinlux at the beginning of the next round. The next thing that will happen is you are going to resolve the docket. So this is looking at the decrees in play and seeing which one was passed. Like I said, if one of the 2 other decrees do not have more than the cult decree will unfortunately be the one that does pass. But if one of the other 2 do have more than the cult decree requires, then that will be the one that passes. So for example, if this was the one that ended up passing, this is belt tightening. This is an order, so this is a resolve and discard. So this is a one-time thing. So this one is, if passed, the lead sponsor may remove any 2 city needs. If they do, they gain 8 victory points and lose 1 influence. So that's a little bit of an example of what one of the orders would be. But that is the second thing that you would do during the Night's Fall. So the next thing is you will resolve the cults. You will look in Dinlux and any cultists that were not arrested. So for example, let's say these 2 were arrested during the round. There is 1 still on the board. The remaining cultists left on the board would then be triggered for a second time. You would look at the threat board, and if there was no card there, a new card would be flipped out. If there was a card there, a trouble token would be added. This would get discarded, and then wherever this ends, that is going to be how many victory points the cult would get. So in this instance, the cult would gain 4 victory points. So during the round, you do want to try to arrest as many of the cultists as possible. Next, you will build the lighthouse. So wherever it ended, you will then look at the blue side and then how many influence you have over here. I would take back my influence here. All influence that you do spend to cast votes, as well as do the city needs and build the floors in the lighthouse, all of those do come back to you. But after you do gain the victory points for building the lighthouse, you will discard the current lighthouse that is in play, and you will reveal the next lighthouse for the next round. And obviously this would get pushed down to the bottom. And the last few small things is you would take back all of your workers, place them back onto the boards. Like I said, you do take back your influence as well. In the multiplayer game, you would pass the Speaker's Medallion, which is the first player marker, but obviously in the solo mode, you will not do that. You will always be the first player. And then you would empty the city coffers, which is where you place the coins that you are paying for taxes. So whenever you pay taxes for placing out your workers on the different tiers, you always place them into the city coffers, because there is a specific seeker that actually can use the coins that are in the city coffer. So yes, it's only the tax money that goes into here. Any other money that you would spend to do something would go into the general supply. And that would be the end of a round. This would continue moving into the second round, third round, fourth round, and fifth round. At the end of the fifth round, you would then count up all of your victory points. Whatever player has the most victory points would be the winner. In the multiplayer game, if the cultist has the most victory points, it would actually be the player that had the most cult influence. But like I said, in the cooperative mode as well as the solo mode, you are playing against the cultists. So at the end of the game, if the cultists have more victory points than you do, unfortunately, you in the solo mode lose, or you as a group in the cooperative mode would lose the game. So something that I do want to quickly mention here is the ability to change the difficulty of your game when it comes to the solo mode and the cooperative mode. There is things called hidden threats, which this is something that is in play with the multiplayer as well. Basically at the beginning of the game, the cultists are going to gain 3 hidden threats. So you are going to deal 3 hidden threat cards, and you are going to place this hidden threats tile on top of them. And at the end of the game, this is going to be the victory points that the cultists get, and it is unknown from all players. So at the end of the game, you will simply reveal the 3 threat cards that are here, and the cultists will gain the victory points in the bottom right-hand corner. So this here, for example, the cultists would gain 15, 18, and 10 victory points. They would gain that. But this is a way in the solo mode and the cooperative mode to make the game more difficult or less difficult if you want. So there are different difficulties. Normal is going to be 3 cards. To make it intermediate, you can go up to 5 of these hidden threats. You could do hard, which is 7 of these hidden threats, or you could do extreme, which is 9 of these hidden threats. So it's basically just giving the cult more victory points at the end of the game that are unknown to you as the players. And these threats can have a huge variety of victory points on them, and they're going to be hidden from you as the players. So you never know how many victory points the cult is going to get at the end of the game. So the more of these cards that you add, the more difficult it's going to be to beat the cultists. But I believe there's anywhere from 3 victory points on these cards all the way up to 20. All right, so before I end off this video, I do quickly just want to mention the other things that the Winds of Change expansion adds. Like I said, it does add that solo mode. It also adds the cooperative mode as well. But there's other things that this adds in too. So the first thing is it does add in more of the cards that are in the game. So it adds in more of the research cards that you can get. It adds in more of the threat cards that you can get. It also adds in more of the decree cards. So obviously it adds the cult decree cards for the cooperative and solo, but it adds in more of the other decree cards. And it also adds in rezoning decree cards. So these are actually connected to other tiles that you can place into Dinlux. And these are going to be kind of permanent to the game. So as you decide to pass these rezoning laws, they actually allow you to switch out the tiles. And those are going to be the tiles that you use until that law is passed again and you swap them back. So every player's game of Kinfire Council could be different than any other players, just with the different tiles that are swapped out, if that makes sense. So there is 1 or 2 others of each of these different tiles, and based off of those rezoning decrees that you pass, you're going to swap out those tiles and change up the abilities. But one thing with the rezoning laws is that each game you are taking 4 of the 18, because there is 1 rezoning law card for each of the 18 spaces in Dinlux. You are only going to be shuffling 4 of those, and then at the end of the game you will take those 4 rezoning laws out of that deck and then reshuffle in 4 new ones for the next game. So it's not going to be a quick thing that you're going to be switching out all of these different things. It's going to be a slow build and change of your own city of Dinlux. All right, and then lastly, for the Winds of Change expansion, there are these tokens here which you can add. These are favor tokens, and they are going to be used exactly like a magic token. So these here, they're like wild tokens. You can use them as coins, food, the rare or common goods. So the favor tokens can be used just like that, wild, for any of those 4 things. But the only thing with the favor tokens is every time you decide to use a favor token, the cult actually gains 2 victory points. So they have that kind of negative to them, but they are very helpful. So very risky to use, but helpful at the same time. All right, friends, so that is everything for today's video. That is the solo guide to Kinfire Council. Hopefully this has helped you if you are interested in playing Kinfire Council solo. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Also, hit that subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. A huge thank you again to Incredible Dream Studios for sponsoring today's video. I will be doing a solo live stream of Kinfire Council on July 31st at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys are interested in seeing me play this game solo, definitely come and join for that. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. I love you so, so much. Remember, you are somebody's reason to smile, and I will see you in the next board game video. Bye, friends.